everybody, John here from All Miniatures Great and Small, and today's Flames of War unit overview is going to look at the mighty ISU-122 Heavy Self-Propelled Artillery Battery. So this is an interesting tank. It shares the same kind of base hull as the IS-2, so it's a heavy tank, and it shares the same gun as the IS-2. So let's go ahead and take a look at the card and see what this bad boy has. Alright, so he's hit on a 3. He's aggressive. He has a front armor of 9, side armor of 8, top armor of 2. So the same exact armor as a Tiger tank, and pretty equivalent armor to a Panther tank. They have a motivation of confident, 4+. In counterattack and assault, they can only manage that on a 5+, which is because it's a self-propelled gun, and last stand rating of 3+. The skill is 4+, but in assault it's only squishing guys on a 5+. And again, that's the self-propelled gun penalty that all self-propelled guns pretty much have across the board. Movement wise, tactical 10 inches, terrain 12 inches, cross-country 18, road 20, with a cross-check of 3+. Weapon-wise, it has a 122 millimeter barrel gun with two modes of fire. Direct fire, 28 inches, one shot whether it's halted or moving, anti-tank 14, 2+ firepower, brutal, forward firing, and slow firing. So the same exact stats as the IS-2 gun. The slow firing meaning that you can only, you add +1 to the to hit value when you're shooting on the move. So things are harder to hit when you move. Brutal means infantry, gun teams, unarmored tank teams re-roll successful saves against a hit from this gun, which is very nice. In addition to that, you can choose to fire the whole battery as an artillery bombardment. In that case, you've got a 72-inch range, anti-tank 3, 3-up firepower, so very nice firepower, and forward firing as well. And then optionally, you can add a 12.7 millimeter AA machine gun with the standard stats that you'd find for that: 20 inches, 3 halted, 2 on the move, anti-tank 4, 5+ firepower, and it could be fired as self-defense AA. So, pretty interesting tank. They come in at about 6.5 points, so just a hair cheaper than a IS-2, and we'll talk about that comparison in a little bit. You can also upgrade your ISU with that 50 cal. You don't get it by default, but you can add that for 1 point for the whole battery. Otherwise, they don't have any machine guns, which can be problematic in some circumstances. All right, so the ISU-122 has a lot of the same pros and cons as the IS-2. However, it's a much more niche machine. You're not going to be using these to assault infantry positions or gun positions. You're going to use them to shoot people out of said positions. With that said, let's go ahead and look at the matchups for the ISU-122 versus some common German armor you guys might be seeing. So we'll start with the little guy, a StuG. So the 122 kind of is ideally suited for taking on a StuG. The big AT-14 on that gun means that at short range the StuG does not get a save, and at long range they need to roll a 6 on their armor roll to even have a chance of glancing that shot. And even if you do glance, that 2+ firepower means that you're going to be bailed out or destroyed. So that's all well and good. Now the downside is the StuG can hurt these guys from the front. So if you have enough StuGs, these guys aren't invulnerable, kind of like how the IS-2s are invulnerable. That front armor 9 means that at short range, if I roll a 1, the StuG can penetrate them. At long range, that roll of a 1 means I've glanced the shot. So at long range, he still can't hurt these guys. But at short range, he can, and that's something to keep in mind. From the side, obviously, with side armor of 8, the StuG can threaten them. Not a great chance, but if they get the opportunity, they will probably take it. So a pretty good matchup. Obviously, you'd be able to take a lot more StuGs than you would these guys, and the StuGs would get 2 shots each if they're not moving. So it kind of balances out. But in that engagement, it would tip towards these guys, the ISU's favor. However, you would have to spend several turns of shooting to whittle down that StuG platoon. All right, that's well and good, but let's talk about the Tiger and the Panther next. Even though the ISU-122 has a big tank-killing gun with AT-14 2+ firepower, against these guys, it's a similar matchup, although slightly worse because the front armor is 1 less on these guys. When you're dueling or fighting Tigers and Panthers, the main problem that I've encountered is these guys can outrange you by a considerable margin. They have almost an identical gun, but with 2 shots to your 1 shot, and although they have a worse firepower, 3+ firepower, 2+ firepower, you get twice the shots, and you get a 40-inch range. These guys, remember, only have a 28-inch range. So at maximum range, even a full turn's movement isn't going to get these guys in range. And that's a lot of fire you're eating before you can even return fire. So that's something to consider. These guys, although you might want to hang them back and snipe, with 28 inches, you really don't have a lot of sniping potential with them. So the matchup really isn't that good for the ISU-122 versus the heavy cats. It is, you can still win. You're still throwing AT-14 downrange, which is frightening to those Germans. But it's, in a straight-up duel, equal number of points, the German players are going to win the majority of the time, unless you completely luck out or something along those lines. But, gun duel is not the only thing that these guys do. They also have that very nice bombardment, that anti-tank 3+ firepower bombardment, which is pretty nice. When you think about the types of regiments you can take and how you can field these guys, that becomes perhaps a viable tactic. So that's a good segue. Let's talk about what ways you can field the ISU-122 in your games. So the first thing is obviously the heavy self-propelled artillery regiment. So that is basically a HQ that consists of an IS-2, and then you have platoons you can take, or companies, I guess, of these guys, and you can take, I think, up to 4 of them, but regardless, in each battery you can take between 2 and 5 of these guys. So it's you can put a lot of heavy metal on the table. 3 of these guys runs about 13 points. Or sorry, 2 of these guys run about 13 points. So again, that's like 6.5 points, a little bit cheaper than an IS-2. Comparing it to an IS-2, you lose a front point of armor, but you gain the ability to bombard, and you're slightly cheaper, and only slightly, especially if you take the 50 cal upgrade. But still, and you're trading not being that great an assault tank for that bombardment. So the self-propelled artillery regiment can be pretty interesting to play, because you could play in your face with these guns in direct fire mode, or you could hang back and bombard. If you've got 2 or 3 platoons of these guys, you know, 3 each. So this is 19 points for 3. You can drop quite a few templates on the Germans, which can be scary because these are scary templates. They're AT3, 3 plus firepower. So that means against anything but a Tiger, you know, top armor 1, if they roll a 1, you penetrate. If they roll a 2, you're going to glance them. So they do face destruction in artillery bombardment. But even scarier is things like infantry and gun teams. Just having so many artillery templates, you know, dropped on them can be scary. So I think that is a potential way to play them, is to hang back. If the Tigers and Panthers are outranging you and you can't direct fire, you have some you have some recourse. You can drop an artillery bombardment somewhere, maybe even directly on top of those tanks, and you know, get some revenge. But whereas the IS-2 is kind of impotent in that scenario. So do I like them? Yeah, I do. Right now I only have 3, and I want to add some more. I got some good advice from someone on the Soviet Flames of War Facebook page. I think it was Les. If it is, shout out to Les. That you can swap out these barrels quite easily with the 122 and the nearly identical 152. Everything's the same except the barrel. You know, just by push fitting them once they have paint on them. I glued these, unfortunately, so these are ISU-122s and will stay that way, but I'll probably pick up a box and make them swappable. So boy, I really digress there, but the heavy self-propelled artillery regiment is one way to field them, and it's an interesting way. I mean, you could take 3 or 4 regiments, or no, I guess these were called batteries in this formation. 3 or 4 of these batteries at almost 20 points each, and command, and maybe throw in a small infantry platoon, and that's a lot of artillery. That's a lot of armor to get through. Not a lot of direct fire, but the direct fire you have is scary. The other option is adding these as a support platoon to some other formation. T-34s, the Tank Hunter, SU-100 regiment, things like that, and they can do some work because they're dual purpose. Because they have the bombardment plus the direct fire, you'll find a use for them for the most part. If you do take them, I do recommend you pick up an observer. Get one of those little BA-64 observer cars. The IS-2 is a pricey observer, the regimental commander, because he can observe, but he's not shooting his main gun, which is, you know, pretty powerful. But you know, if you're hanging back and bombarding before moving in, that's the way to go. So, in conclusion, what do I think about these guys? I like them a lot. I think they are cool. I like the kind of brutal, ugly aspect to these guys. That they're you know, they're just monsters. They're not invulnerable, but I kind of like that, and that lets you take more of them, and I find that kind of cool. Will you see these guys on the table? Yeah, I think the October battle report will feature a heavy self-propelled artillery regiment, so you have that to look forward to if you want to see these guys in action. So there you go, guys. That's a look at the ISU-122 out of the Bagration book, a multi-purpose heavy tank that is pretty good in most situations except assault. And I'll leave it at that. I would like to mention we do have a Flames of War Patreon. If you want more Flames of War content, particularly we have exclusive monthly battle reports for our patrons. So check that out if you want more Flames of War content. Also, please check us out on Facebook at All Miniatures Great and Small. We'd appreciate a like and subscribe there. Also at YouTube, right here, we would love to have you like and subscribe as well. Click that bell to receive a notification when we publish new content. And thanks for watching. We appreciate you guys. Take care.